Let's go live. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this roundtable on dispelling common homeschool myths and fears that people have before they start homeschooling or when they're just starting out homeschooling. Today, I have joining me Z from Adret Comics, Britt Young from the Rooster Wolf Pine, Laura Saldana from Hartspark Homeschool, Wendy Fama from Yugo World, Tina Arizonia from Big Easy Homeschooling Mom. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, My Homeschool Village. They are offering a full pre-K through 12 curriculum for only $30 a month with coupon code HQ5. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the comments so that all of you guys can check them out. If you guys have any questions throughout this roundtable, please go ahead and put them in the comments. Tina is going to be awesome. She's going to keep track of all of those comments so that we can be able to answer any of your questions after we go over some of the common homeschool myths and fears. We also had a post in the group that kind of went viral where people were discussing things, the common myths that they had heard before they started homeschooling, and people were sharing their different solutions and answers to these common myths. So really cool to see the community come together and really encourage everyone about homeschooling. So I want to go ahead and start with our first myth. I think it is the most common myth that everyone hears, and that is that homeschoolers find it hard to socialize and or are socially awkward. So I'm going to start from the top of the screen over. So Britt, I would love to hear you address this myth.
Yeah, so I have 4 children. They range from 5 to 13, and I found that it's actually the opposite because they're out in the world every day. They're interacting with people at grocery stores or a swim practice, or most recently, we have an organic farm and we went through our organic inspection, and my children really took the lead on that, and they were able to take over what my role typically is and explain our farm, how it runs, and they would bounce off of each other and really work together. So I feel like they are independent learners and they're independent thinkers now. And I never have to worry in a public setting that my children are able to carry on a conversation and really hold their own.
Wendy, I would like to hear you talk about this and your take on this myth. It looks like you might be muted.
Apologize for that. I absolutely agree with Britt. I think one of the biggest myths is that our children are isolated. And what many people that aren't homeschooling don't realize is we do actually count on our children having that interaction with the outside world. That's all part of our curriculum. And that's one of the things that is very different from traditional schooling and homeschooling. It's that interaction at grocery stores and, making, calling up and finding out, what an event is going to offer, what time, making that schedule, talking to different people, and making friends in these settings as well. So I think it's actually the contrary. Our children have more opportunity for real world connection and developing their social skills. So it's definitely something that I think unless you're a homeschooler, you really understand the depth of those types of interactions.
Tina, I would like to hear your take on this myth.
I can't hear her.
Tina, I think that you might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. What I was saying was I think that homeschoolers have so much of a more diverse opportunity to be they flexible scheduling, which will have more opportunity for extracurricular activities. They have more time for co-ops, community involvement, and I think research has shown that they're not socially awkward as some people may think, and they do score better than public school children on measures of social, emotional, and psychological development. So I think that kind of debunks the myth that they are socially find it hard to socialize or socially awkward.
Z, I would like to hear from you on your take on this myth.
Well, I'll have to think of what I can add since Britt, Whitney, and Tina already said so many awesome things. Of course, I definitely have to negate that myth as well. I've seen a lot of interesting quotes about how, the argument is from public schoolers that homeschool kids don't socialize enough and everyone's awkward. But we really, school's not really there for socialization. I know there's friend making, and different things over the years, but then there's also a lot of social anxiety that comes along with schooling, depending on the child, depending on their needs. I feel that homeschooling definitely gives you an opportunity to let your child grow and thrive and bloom in a way that really, really works for them versus them being forced into a social situation that they may not be ready for. So I'd say just being able to let your children grow at their own pace and be able to interact with other children and adults. We're not forcing our kids to say, hey, you're 6, be with the 6-year-olds. You're 7, be with the 7-year-olds. Depending, if you have a big family, then your kids are all there together. If you're joining co-ops, then your children are really getting to interact with children of many different ages. Wherever we go, it's so funny, wherever we go, we're not often with a lot of other homeschoolers, but there's always someone, you mentioned the grocery store, whatever store we're at, or if we're out at an event somewhere, there's always someone coming up to us to say, oh my goodness, your children are so kind, they're so respectful, they're so different. And we're like, well, we homeschool, and I don't get as much pushback now as we did back in the day when we first started. So now it really seems like the people that we engage with are just like floored at how our children interact with each other, how they interact with us, how they interact just with people in society. Whether it's a kid or an adult, they show kindness, they show compassion, they show consideration when it comes to interacting with other humans. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
So, Laura, would you like to add anything?
Well, I think it's kind of funny because I think many people will say, oh, well, I knew this neighbor, they homeschooled and they were really weird. And they didn't, take up with the conversations like a normal person or whatever. And the thing is, that can be true, but that can be true for public schoolers also, just like Z was telling. My husband was raised in public school, I was raised in homeschool, and I am far more social than he is. And the thing is that today there's so many opportunities. It's so much easier now than it was when I was a kid, even though there was tons of stuff where we lived when I was a kid to get involved in. There's so much now. We've traveled all over the US in an RV, and everywhere we went, I would join co-ops, and they're everywhere. Even in the smallest towns, there's usually some kind of organization or co-op or class that's within an hour of you. And things like library classes or courses or crafting clubs, or the museum will offer some kind of courses or clubs. And then there's sports, and there's just so many different opportunities. And it's so much easier now that, yes, while it could be true, there's no reason it has to be. There's so many opportunities to make that not be the case. And I think what Z said about social anxiety in public school is also very, very relevant, because when your child doesn't have all that pressure on them, they are able to be very confident and be able to just be themselves and talk to people. And I think that realness and genuinity is what really stands out to people, because they're not used to seeing that in children, because a lot of times kids will only speak to their peers, or they don't know how to speak with respect to people who are older or things like that. And so I think that's what often stands out to people.
I would have to agree. As a homeschool graduate myself, I don't. I feel like you have to also take into account personalities. I had siblings who were more shy. I had siblings who made friends everywhere they went, and it really does depend on the kid. But I think that homeschool parents really put an emphasis on being able to meet their kids' socialization needs. And I feel like being able to interact with people from all different backgrounds, all different ages, you're going to actually have much more well rounded socialization skills than if you're just socializing in a structured environment where you're only interacting with your peers. That's not to say that you can't have really good social skills in public school, but I think that homeschool kids might even have an advantage with all the interaction that they have with bunches of different kinds of people. So the next myth kind of actually nicely dovetails into what Laura was talking about, is that homeschool students don't have the opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities or sports teams. So just because many homeschoolers are not in typical after school clubs doesn't mean they can't join in. Depending on your kids' hobbies, you can sign them up for, like you were talking about, dance classes, martial arts, drama, swimming, piano, book club. And oftentimes, a lot of the homeschool co ops will provide programs like this, in addition to the ones that already are there at your local library. And kids can join in community sports. This can be, rec leagues or even a homeschool sports team. Most public school sports teams do allow homeschool students to try out now as well, which wasn't something that was necessarily available when I was being homeschooled. So it's really nice to see people being more open-minded about kids' educational background. So do you guys have anything that you would like to add about this myth?
I do actually. I think that one of the even a myth in itself is extracurricular, because if we're doing homeschooling, then it's not really that it's extra, because we're considering, I think if we're homeschooling, we're focusing on our children's talents, and that might specifically be dance or a sport. So it allows, one of the advantages in this sense is that it allows us to really go and align our curriculum and our entire school or our homeschool around our students and their talents. And one of the things that I have found out, or I have, witnessed with many years of being in formal education, is that we're always pressing the curriculum in the four core subjects, and we are forgetting that our students are very unique. They have different talents, intelligences, and we're not able to exploit that if we're just sticking to math, science, social studies, and language arts. So if we tap into their talents that they have, whether it be cooking, and take that away from extracurricular and kind of make it the center of learning, we will find students that are much more happy, they're much more productive, and they're excelling. They're learning the core subjects in very unique and different ways that are conducive to the way they understand the world, and then how they'll process that information and produce whatever it is we're trying to assess, or just to move through their grades and then eventually get to college readiness or the job market. So I always have a problem with that term extracurricular.
So Britt, did you want to add something?
I was going to say, based off of what Z said about children and their behaviors, it reminds me of my children started out with swim lessons at our local Y, which has tons of homeschoolers. I had no idea how many families homeschooled until my kids were enrolled in a swim class. And the instructor actually said, "Oh, you're homeschooled?" He's like, "I want your kids to swim for me one day on the swim team or on high school." And he's like, "I love homeschoolers." And then he said they have time, they have dedication, they're so well behaved. And I just thought, well, he doesn't even know my children that well yet, but he's going based off of his years and years of experience with homeschooled children. So there's this long track record of those wonderful qualities. And when my children did sign up, I found that we have so much more time. So the beginning of our day can be spent on our lessons, and then there's no pressure to be able to go to our practice. Where my children started off in the public school system, they were there. We were driving in the car from 7:30. They started their day at 8. They didn't get out till 3, and they were kind of spent by the end of the day. They didn't have time or energy to really put into these extra hobbies. We did do some of them, but I felt like it was just taking away from our quality of life. So I find that they're more open and willing to work hard now that that pressure is taken off of them. And I'm grateful for the opportunity, especially with like our local YMCA. And I've spoken to other families. That's always a great option, it seems. They're very welcoming to homeschool families.
Tina, Z, or Laura, do you guys want to add anything on this one?
I can, because I think they covered it really well on things that you can join into. But I think that also, if you're concerned that like my kid loves art and I don't see anything that's offered out there, you can always just put it out there. I think there's a lot of people who are afraid to just start something, but it doesn't have to be a big, complicated thing. I'm an illustrator and my kids love art. And so it's very easy for me to just post on there and say, hey, I want to host a really simple art class if anybody would like to join, and people can jump right in there. And there's tons of opportunities, like they said, for joining into other things, but don't be afraid to just put it out there. It doesn't have to be a big paid thing. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing. If you need them to bring something, just say, okay, these are what you need to bring. This is the time, and see if there's interest, because there's always things that whether you're joining with a co-op or you're just putting out there on your own, it doesn't have to be complicated, and you can still supply your kids' social and interests needs through something like that just by putting it out there.
Laura, that's great that you mentioned art. I was going to go in the same direction. So I also illustrate. My husband's an artist, and we publish epic comic books with the Sound Moral Compass. I think that's my plan. So that's what we're about. We're all about creativity in the arts, and that's really been a huge basis for our homeschooling philosophy from the beginning, really tapping into what our children are excited about and the things that inspire and drive them to be awesome and great. And so when we can build our homeschooling situation, I agree with exactly what Wendy said, building it around what they're great at, then we're providing them with the experience that they need to really thrive. So we don't do a whole bunch of sports, but we're big on the arts, we're big on creativity. So yeah, that's my.
Tina, did you want to add something, or are we ready to move on to our next myth?
We can move on. I think everybody has covered everything. It just, yeah, we can move on. I think it's been covered beautifully.
So one of the myths that I hear a lot is that all homeschooling families are religious. So you don't have to be religious to homeschool your children. Homeschooling is an education style. So it's more about giving your kids a good education that fits their learning style, while also taking into account their individual needs, passions, and interests. You have the choice to teach your kids the specific beliefs that you want to pass on to them, but it doesn't have to be a specific religion. There are secular resources out there. There are ones for all different types of religions. So homeschooling is not for a specific religion or anything like that. It is all inclusive. So another myth that I hear a lot is that all homeschool families are large. And the average size of a homeschool family, according to a study that they did, they say that about with one child in the family, it's about 20%, two children in the family is 28%, and three or more is 52%. So not all homeschool families have tons and tons of kids. It is awesome to have lots of siblings, but it is in no way a requirement. The myth that I wanted to hear you guys kind of tackle is the myth that homeschool students are sheltered. And this can have a lot of different connotations, but I'd love to hear your guys' take on this. Let's go ahead and start. Yeah, go ahead and start, Z.
Jump in. So this can be a tricky one. I don't feel that by definition sheltered is a bad thing. I think that there are a lot of people of the opinion that we just need to throw our kids out there and let them make it and figure it out in survival of the fittest. I don't, if that's your philosophy, then that's fine. But I do feel that as parents, and especially those of us who've made this decision, as challenging as it may be at times, to homeschool our kids, is because we want to provide them with some sort of shelter or protection from something that we don't agree with. We all may have our different ideas and our different philosophies about what that is, whether you disagree with how the school system is teaching, whether your children have not been able to get the support that they needed in the school system, whether it is due to a faith issue or something that you don't necessarily agree with. You know what I mean? I don't feel that sheltering is a bad thing. We need, literal shelter for survival. However, I will say that in my family, we do not keep our kids from understanding the truth of what's going on in the world. If anything, we may be more honest with our kids than a lot of other families. However, we are very particular about the phone fell. We are very particular about the resources that we share with them. We are very particular about what we consume when it comes to media, because everything out there isn't good. So maybe this concept of a sheltered homeschooler that has no knowledge of the world and won't be able to function in society, no, not at all. But a well supported child who we work to shield from things that aren't for children, well, then, yes, I say we shelter our kids. That'll be how I respond to that one.
Britt, do you want to respond to this one?
Sure. I agree with what she said too. I feel that my kids have had more real world experiences. We have more time, so we're able to travel. Our family enjoys doing that together. And they're meeting all different people from different backgrounds, whether that's on a plane or at the location that we're at. And they can speak to so many different types of people. And not everybody that we meet we can relate to or understand, but my kids are really love soaking up like different cultures and different environments. And I think that that allows them, for us, even just traveling, whether that's navigating your way through an airport or making phone calls or speaking to somebody that's in charge, listening to directions and following rules. I just think that our kids, yes, can be safely sheltered, but we can also give them a lot of other experiences, and just kind of see what they're capable of, what maybe interests them. Maybe taking a family vacation or a little field trip can kind of open your child's eyes to something that they never knew that they had an interest in, and that could lead them down a different path. And I've seen that with my own children. So I definitely agree with what Zia said, though.
Wendy, do you want to talk about this myth?
Sure. I think I also there's two sides of the coin. On one hand, yes, we are sheltering them, but I think the shelter is from the unusual environment of throwing a bunch of kids together, for example, during recess, and just having to compete for survival, whether that's what like materialistically or just their personality. They need to be more extroverted. The introverts are kind of to the side. I mean, I know that that's the norm as far as public and private education goes, but it's not normal. We as adults, we don't have that situation. So yes, maybe we are sheltering them from this unnatural environment on one hand, but on the other hand, like Britt said, we do take our children and they to have the opportunities to experience different things. So they're actually gaining more real world experiences and just developing other skills outside of a very controlled environment. So as far as being sheltered in what some parents might think, okay, they're being sheltered from the world. They're just sitting at their desk in a small corner of their house. They have no one to speak to. Well, that's not in any case. And that's something that we want to stay away from, because that is very unhealthy, be it in a classroom, which that also happens in a classroom, that kid in the back that doesn't get the focus of a teacher, or no one pays attention to him, or if they are, maybe it's in a negative way. Whether it's homeschooling or public schooling, we need to stay away from that and make sure that our child is getting a more holistic experience with their natural surroundings. And I think, and so, that's what we're focused on. So I think that these are myths that have definitely, in this day and age, we've outgrown. But there's still, those parents that are on the fence and think, oh, well, I know that these are some of the the shadows over homeschooling, and they still carry that with them. But the reality is that our children are in no way sheltered. And if, there are introverts, a lot of kids are introverted, I think more now than probably my generation, just because they spend so much time alone with their devices and whatnot. So in one sense, their kids are definitely more susceptible today to being alone, whether it's after school, and it's all about that social emotional development that they're receiving at home, and just being able to regulate their emotions and say, okay, I'm alone. There's no problem with that because I have a task at hand, as opposed to being, I'm alone because everyone in this environment is ignoring me. So there's a lot to consider there. And again, it's just, each family is different. And again, I had kids that went through the homeschooling process, but then I was also, I led a school of over 300 students, which my kids were a part of at a time. So for me, there's really that fine line between homeschooling, and just schooling for the child, be it at home or, in facilities. But obviously a teacher can't address, the specific needs of all these children in a controlled environment. And that's why we choose to homeschool, because we can control that and we can give our students or our children exactly what they need. So yes and no. I hope that was clear. I kind of got a little too passionate about that question, but
So something that I want to also mention is I had 4 siblings. I never had any I didn't have any need to have if anything, I wanted more alone time.
yeah.
So, whether you are going out and seeking out opportunities like selling at the farmer's market, or doing community service, or going to homeschool co-op, I think one of the benefits that homeschooling brings is it brings your family together as a whole. And so there's a lot of these things like you're talking about where you're going to be able to develop kids' character, and you're going to be able to help them blossom into really awesome adults. And socialization is an important aspect, but like you said, so is emotional regulation and being able to have the skills to be able to be on your own and work successfully. Because there's going to be lots of times as an adult where you do have to work on your own. And so I do think that there is some value to that as well, like you were saying, Wendy. So, Tina and Laura, do either of you want to talk about this myth, or do we want to move on to the next one?
I think that I've seen both sides of this because my parents they really were very protective in what we were exposed to. And then compounding with my mom had a lot of health problems, and we lived in a very small town for a good chunk of my schooling years. And so for a good portion there, we didn't get as much social interaction, and my parents were, very particular about what we saw. So if they didn't believe in evolution, so any book that had evolution in it would be marked out that section. Or if there was a girl this tiny on an illustration that had a bikini, they would go in and mark out put a little t-shirt and shorts or whatever. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but my parents were very, very, very careful about all of those sort of things. And my philosophy kind of coming from that has been with my children to allow exposure to some things we don't believe for the purpose of being able to talk about those things, and For example, evolution, I'm not going to mark any of that out. We talk about it. We talk about this is what they believe, this is why they believe it, this is what we think. You're going to have to make your choice on what you believe. And honestly, I think that's the only way they can have a true opinion for themselves is if they're allowed to make the decision for themselves with the evidence on both sides. Otherwise, they're just parroting you. And then the other side of it is that we are in Texas, and most of our homeschooling has been in Texas. But for a while there, we lived in California, and the co-ops there is a completely different homeschool culture. And the co-ops there, most of the children, almost all of them, had just come from public school within the last year or two. And so those children had been exposed to a lot more things, whether it's, language or beliefs or people who look different or all these different things. And so my kids were exposed to a lot more variety, and we just had conversations about it. And I think it was healthy. I think it was healthy because they're going to grow up and be exposed to all kinds of different things. And so, yes, there's a level of sheltering that, I'm sorry, is it Wendy or Mindy? Wendy. Wendy said that, there is a level that you want to be able to say, okay, this is what we believe, because you want to instill your values in your children. But there's also a big portion that they're going to grow up and go in the world, and so they might as well know some about these things before they leave your nest.
So one of the other things that I think kind of goes well with this, you guys I think already addressed, is that some people believe that homeschoolers are not allowed to listen to mainstream music or watch any television. But again, homeschooling is an education style. That's more of a parenting decision. So that's not about us. Homeschooling isn't about a single way to do it or a specific set of rules. It's about freedom, and that gives you the freedom to choose what media your kids consume. So maybe you decide that Cocomelon is not for your house, right? Or you are okay with certain different cartoons and things like that. It really is up to you as a parent to decide what you want your kid to be able to consume and what kind of content that you think is appropriate for them, like Laura was mentioning. And so I think it's important to remember that there are different homeschool philosophies and methods, but each homeschool family is unique. They're going to adopt different pieces of different philosophies that fit their family. So let's go on to this next myth, which is parents aren't qualified to teach. We hear this a lot. Pretty much the thread, we had at least 5 or 6 people who said this is a myth that they frequently hear, or that you need a college degree to be able to teach your kids. And it's important to remember a good education is not a one-size-fits-all system. So each child is different, and as your parent, you know what's best for them. Plus, with all the different good curriculum, workbooks, courses, and resources, you're not going to be alone. And studies have shown that homeschoolers outscore other students in public school on standardized tests, and it is not dependent on their parents' level of education, teacher certification, or even the amount of money that they spent on that education. So being involved in your kids' education and being their advocate makes a huge difference in their level of education. So, Brett, I would love to hear from you and on encouraging parents that they can teach their kids.
I absolutely believe that. I think that leaning into your child's interests, with 4 children, they all have completely different outlooks on life and interests. But I'll use the example. My daughter, when she was still in public school, was absolutely certain she wanted to be an astrophysicist. She was in first grade, second grade, she was consumed with it. She loved it so much. And then when we started homeschooling, she had all the resources you could imagine at her fingertips, books, and slowly she was writing more about being an astrophysicist. And as she was writing, she said, I think I like writing more. Like, I don't think I just want to be in this bubble of being an astrophysicist. I still love space and I want to learn about it, but I think that I want to be a writer. And she loves art. So she wants to be a writer and an illustrator. And so her goals completely shifted. But she said, I feel that if I was in school, everybody knew that that's what I wanted to be. And I feel like I might have been forced into that role, whether that be in my classes that I took or in the future. And she said, I'm really glad that I'm homeschooled because I had the freedom to decide maybe that's not the right path for me right now. And that could still change, of course, down the road. She's only 13, but she's really honed in on those writing skills and her art skills now because she really feels drawn to that path. So I think that leaning into your child's interests and really giving them any resources that you can, and there's so many free resources out there. I have a blog post where I share free ones that our family uses on a daily basis, and then I don't think there's any shame in outsourcing help when you need it. If it's something like math, that was never my strongest suit, but my children do an online math course. They love their professor. They work at their own pace, and my son is really blossomed into being this mathematician that we didn't see coming. So I think just kind of leaning into your children and trusting the process, being patient. Not everything is going to work out well. Not every curriculum is going to be best for you. But if you just sit back and realize, even if you have the worst curriculum and it's not the right fit, they're learning what works for them or what doesn't work for them. So patience is big.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. Having a lot of patience, and one of the major themes I think in homeschooling for parents, because I think this is more about us as parents now, how we deal with the teaching as opposed to the learning, is to find your people, to find a group of other parents that can help navigate some of these topics that are more difficult for us. And I just want to just mention, I think the essence of learning is not so much the knowledge, but but the skill to research and know where to obtain the knowledge and the skills that you want to hone in on. So it's not about having the perfect curriculum, like Britt said, because sometimes we're halfway through the year and we think, oh, this isn't working for me. What do I do? Just scrap this now, start over. What do I do? So it's along the way that we have to say, okay, with this curriculum, this works, this doesn't. I have to research, and what better lesson for our students than to teach them how to inquire, how to research. And so we're in the age of the internet, where every single thing we need to know as far as just knowledge, we could pretty much find, and if not, we could definitely find it at the library. I think, and learning is more about, we could learn and memorize an entire science book for grade 3, but if we don't know how to apply that and the skills that come from that and have the opportunities to use that, then, well, it's, as much as you have a teacher in front of you that is able, with all the degrees necessary and their credentials to teach, if the kids aren't developing those skills, then, it gets you nowhere. So I think parents, we are even more qualified because we have that extra love, and that's why we're doing it. That love just really propels us to other dimensions to get our kids what we need. And who better, we know our kids, what works, what doesn't, and we also know our limitations. And as long as we're honest with that, and then look for the resources to fill in those gaps, I think parents are absolutely capable of teaching their kids. I mean, we do it in every other sense, right? So why not with school?
Tina, I would love to hear from you on this one.
Yes, and these ladies have been awesome information they're giving. Just to piggyback off that, what Wendy just said, we've been teaching our children since they were born. Okay, we know them best. We in my house with my daughter, she's going into 8th grade. We follow an interest-based learning. So for every core subject, I let her choose what she wants to learn in that. For next year, for history, she wants to learn about Greek mythology because that's something she's very interested in. She loves art, essay writing. I mean, there's just so many things. Let your children lead their learning. Like Amelia said, they're more prone to be have more productivity and to be happy about learning. So I think as parents, we give them that option. We're just there to give them options. But I think with interest based learning, that gives them opinions about what they want to learn in each of the core subjects as well as electives, as well as um, I just lost my train of thought, but it just kind of gives them the option of what they want to learn, and that places that accountability onto them, because you can go back as a parent and say, okay, well, this is what you wanted to learn, you know, what's going right, what's going wrong. And then as Wendy said again, we have that option as parents and the student go and research and get information about that. We are the, a lot more information than when I was in school and we had to, go to the library and cross reference everything. It's just so much information out there. It's available to our kids nowadays. So I appreciate what everybody has said. It's been spot on.
So, Laura, I'd like to hear from you on this one.
Well, I think a big thing is not to be afraid that to learn with your kids. Don't be afraid of that. My brother is an engineer, and he has always said all kinds of different random terms that I had no idea what they meant. Well, now my son wanted to learn about bridges, so we started learning about bridges and the different types of bridges. And so many of these terms make sense now, and it wasn't that hard to learn. It really wasn't. It was just focusing, being intentional about, okay, we are going to learn about this topic because it's not something that interested me before, so I never tried, and I thought, oh, that must be, be above my pay grade, and it's not. And I'm teaching my I have 4 kids, 9, 9, 8, and 7, and they're learning it, and they're in their play, they're talking about, oh yeah, this is a cantilever, and this is this is a cable stayed bridge, and this is the fulcrum, and all this stuff that it's like, it's because they were interested in it. We are very interest led. And I am very, very, I have a different perspective on a lot of this because my mom had so many health problems when I was growing up. I basically had about a 7th grade education because of how poorly her health was. And I had no problem getting into college. I had no problem ever learning. I was a manager. I've led 300 plus people. Um, and my brother, I've never needed any math past decimals, percents, practical math. My brother, he was interested in math. He pursued higher math, and he became an engineer with honors from a very prestigious college. So if you give your children the basics, of course they need basic reading, basic writing, basic math, and then you observe what their interests are, what their passions are, and you support that. Like Britt was saying with her daughter, it's like maybe that's not something you would have focused on as much, but because your child is interested in it, they're likely to pursue something in that. So fuel that. And if it's not their career, that's fine. Maybe it's just a hobby that they love. Either way, you're fueling a love of learning. So if you give them the basics they need to be okay, and then you're giving them a love of learning, then I really don't think you can go wrong. I really don't. And I think that alleviated so much fear for me because I see so many moms who are stressed. What if I don't do enough? What if I miss a box somewhere? It's okay. You're going to be fine. Give them the basics, give them a love of learning, fuel their passions, and you'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Yep. Z, do you have something that you'd like to add on this?
Yes, I would. Once again, everyone says such awesome things. A couple things I wanted to say that may have already been said. One, yes, as parents, we're our children's first teacher. We're their best teacher. Two, we don't have to be repositories of all the knowledge in the world. That's just not possible, right? Like I've been that mom. I've been trying to do everything. Our goal is to be a guide. We want to support our children. We want to inspire them. We want, just like Laura said, everyone said, we want them to have the fundamentals. We want them to have that educational foundation. But as long as you're tapping into things that they love and things that they're interested in, I mean, you'll be so surprised at what they'll go off and learn on their own. And then they'll come back and say, oh, I learned this and that. Okay, that wasn't on, our plan for today, but now you're designing video games. My oldest daughter, we have four daughters too, from 10 to 15, but now my oldest, she's like fully into her graphic design life and designing logos for other kids, and we're bakers and we're chefs and we're artists over here. So you don't have to know everything. You need to love your children. You want to provide the best for your children. And there are countless resources out there. I would love to be a resource if anyone needs help. I tutor, and we have awesome, awesome summer learning coming up. So I'll be sharing that. But there's so many people who would love to help that are just eager in these groups, to help recommend what they use. So be flexible. Unschooling is definitely an option. Deschooling when you first come out of the school system is an option. Sometimes people might take a year to just explore and figure out what their kids really, really need to thrive. So don't let what you perceive as your own shortcomings, maybe when it comes to your education or your qualifications, because that's not what will define your child's educational experience. Pump them with love, guidance, awesomeness, and it'll all work out.
I totally agree. I think you guys have added a lot. I really appreciate you guys for coming on here. We have about 15 minutes left, so let's try to get through a couple of these. I'm noticing a couple of these fears can kind of be combined, because there's kind of a common theme. So one of the concerns that people have is that they need to have a stay-at-home parent, one of the parents stay at home or work from home in order to be able to homeschool. That you can't work and homeschool at the same time. And from my personal experience, my parents, they either would take turns being the stay-at-home parent, or when they did both work, we had an office, and so they made a schoolroom, in the break room into a schoolroom, and that's where we did our homeschool. And so in between meetings, they come and check on us, do lessons on their lunch break. So you can make it work if you are flexible and you are open to homeschooling on a different schedule, because you'd be surprised that at the lower grades you don't need to spend as much time on the education part, and it's more about developing developing their character and helping them to be able to explore and figure out who they are. There's different charts out there that are available about how long each grade really needs to spend on learning based on their attention span. So, Britt, I would love to start with you. We also have a question here about single homeschool parents, and I think that that's part of this question is, if you're a single homeschool parent, how do you homeschool and also work?
Well, I can speak on my husband is gone half of our lives. He is a marine engineer, so he's home and he's away, and so a lot of the time everything falls on me. But we are farmers and business owners, and while I'm not in a cubicle or in an office building, I do need to be focused on the farm. I need to be working. So a lot of the time my kids are outdoors with me, working alongside me, or they might be outside reading on quilts and working on their projects outside while I'm making phone calls. And I mean, I've done a lot of different um, videos this past year, and I've had to, have them say like, hey, can you guys play school for an hour while mom works on this? And so I think it's doable. Back to the scheduling, we have a lot of good friends that actually homeschool at night. The parents are both working during the day, and so whether they're in or out of the home switching out, they find that their kids actually have more of an attention span in the evenings. It's not the case in my house, but I know that it works for a lot of families. And sometimes they're like, we go till 9 o'clock at night, and it really works for us. So I think, again, back to that freedom, there's nobody beating on your door telling you must do this, from 8 to 3 every day, or fit, things in a box. You can do whatever works for your family. And everybody has a season. When my husband comes home and we're both here full time, sometimes he takes on a role that I would otherwise have. And so we just have to be flexible. But I think that the kids love it. I think they love the change. And I think that if you're a single parent, I came from a household where my mom was a single parent, and she did a lot of online teaching or evening teaching. And we had a big family. So I was old enough at that point to stay home and work with the kids. So when I was 15, I would do schoolwork with them in the evenings or the afternoons while she would go out and teach. So I think it's all about just making whatever work for you in the moment.
Wendy, I'd like to hear from you next.
I agree. It's about making it work for you. I think one of the keys here would be organization. And you're absolutely right, Amelia. We don't spend the same amount of time with our younger learners. And it all depends because, as we know, every learner is extremely different. And so it's about reaching goals. And that's one of the things that I always press with homeschool parents. You need to have a goal, to know, like, okay, how are my kids showing their learning, whatever that looks like for your family. You need to make sure that you have that readily like written somewhere so that your student and you know what the goal, what goal you're working towards, because it's more about spending that quality time and getting to that goal than the time spent. Unless, of course, you're reading or something like that. But that would kind of structure your day and let you know, okay, am I able to do this or not? I mean, to be honest with you, there are some cases, there are some single moms that are just working so hard, to provide for their children. And, they may have the heart to homeschool, but they're not able to. So maybe homeschooling for them would look like, let's read and let's reach this goal for this week, and take that pressure off of saying, okay, I need to emulate a school room and a school day, because that's absolutely not what homeschooling is about. And a lot of parents start homeschooling thinking, oh, that's what I need to bring home. So homeschooling just looks very different for everyone. And it's again, if parents know, okay, this is what I'm able to do, this is what our day looks like, and these are the spaces we have, and these are our goals, you just make it work for you. And basically that's it.
Thank you so much, Z, for joining us. I know that you have to hop off now. I really appreciated all of your information that you've shared today, and I look forward to seeing you on another roundtable.
Yay. Thank you so much, Amelia. Thank you, ladies. Everybody have an awesome day. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Okay, so Tina, would you like to go ahead and talk about this one, about do we need, dual incomes? Can you do homeschooling as a single parent? Do you have to have someone stay at home? What is your
Sure. Well,
take on this fear?
well, in my case, I am a single parent, or actually, father's in the home. Like Britt's husband, he's gone all the time. So, and he's really not involved in the homeschooling. So I've taken that on. And due to health reasons, I am actually not able to work, but I do work from home. So I've, you have that versatility when you homeschool. Like somebody said earlier, I'm sorry, I think it was Wendy. You have that option if you work during the day as a parent to homeschool in the evenings or on weekends. Um, and I think I agree with organization being the key, because if you're coming home stressed from work, you have to make dinner. You have to get the kids settled. And then you can do, a couple hours in the evening, a couple hours on the weekend. You don't have to take the full weekend. That's the beauty of homeschooling, is the flex that we have, and we fit the homeschooling into our schedules. So whatever schedule that may be, whether you're working or not working, just because I'm not working out in the workplace doesn't mean that I'm not busy doing other things. So fortunately for me, my daughter is independent enough to where she very rarely asks me for help. even though I offer my assistance, and she's at that age to where if she needs any assistance, she knows that she can research anything online and find the help that she needs, even though I'm in the home with her. So it all depends the way you look at it, but we do have that versatility and flexibility when we homeschool.
So, Laura, I would like to get your take on this as well.
Well, I am a stay-at-home mom, but I work from home and my husband is gone all the time. He's in Colorado right now, I think. He's been in 5 different states over the last couple of days, so I'm not even sure where he is. But I illustrate for the love of homeschooling, and then I also illustrate and write and design and create things for myself for Heart Spark Homeschool. And then on top of that, we are very busy. And one of the biggest topics I usually talk about is schooling on the go because we school on clipboards everywhere. It's at the gym, it's at the discount tire, it's at the laundromat, it's everywhere. And I think it's really good not only to broaden your horizon on like how many hours a day, because I think that's one of the biggest things is people think it's going to take 6, 7 hours a day, and they're like, I don't have that much time in a day. So yes, the younger years, I mean, my four are done in about 3 hours to finish with everybody. And then as they get older, yes, it'll take them a little bit more time, but they're also a lot more independent, like Tina said. So it's a lot less pressure than people think it is. And then also broadening that to not just hours in the day, but also days of the week and days in the year that maybe you school on Saturday and Sunday more and you take Monday and Tuesday off for your kids. Or maybe you school year round and you have more days off throughout the rest of the year. It doesn't have to fit what public school has at all. And I knew another restaurant manager when I was working as one that she was a single mom and she was a restaurant manager. So she was working at least 12 hours a day and she homeschooled her 3 children. She just did it when she got off. And as a restaurant manager, sometimes you have the night shift, sometimes you have the morning shift. So that was going back and forth all over the place, days of the week, hours of the day. And she just made it work. She just fit in school around her schedule. And so it is definitely possible. Does it come with extra challenges? Yeah, but so does when you have a newborn, or maybe your husband is in the military, or all these different lifestyles have their own challenges. And if you want to be able to homeschool, there's a good chance that you can. More than likely, you can make it work in your day.
Thank you guys so much for encouraging everyone. I know this is something that we get asked a lot, and people wanting to know, how do you do it all? And the answer is you're flexible, you're powerful parents, you have a love for your children, and you really just need to keep in mind that it doesn't need to look exactly like public school. If that works for your family, replicating that amount of hours, and that works for your kid, great. You don't have to do that. And so that's important to understand, that there are a lot of different philosophies out there. You can base it on when you're available. Even my parents, when we were older, they worked a graveyard shift for a couple of years. That was one of the ways that they were able to keep the income coming in to be able to pay for the homeschooling and feeding us all and all that. So that's a question that we do get a lot, is about, can homeschooling be affordable? Is it just for people who are rich or have a dual income? And I'm going to talk about 2 questions, and I know, Tina, that you have to hop off really soon. So I just wanted to kind of to ask these 2 fears that we can kind of tackle the 2 of them before we finish. And that is, do you have to have a lot of money to homeschool? And are you messing up your kid's chance of being able to get into college by homeschooling them? So those are the 2 fears that I want to tackle before we're done here. Britt, I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. So the first part about messing up your kids, I think I can speak to, I went through the public school system. It wasn't homeschooling. Where I grew up in Massachusetts was not what it is today. It wasn't very welcoming. My sister had a learning disability, so my mom began homeschooling and then continued to homeschool my other 4 siblings. So that was a fear that she had, but she also said, I have to have confidence in this. I have to stick to it, stick to my guns, stick to my beliefs. And every single one of my siblings that was homeschooled went on to have wonderful families, wonderful careers. Some of them stay at home, but they are wonderful parents, and they're able to support their, spouses. And we always joke that if anybody could have been messed up, it was me, because I was the one that I had to be in the public school every day. And the things that I went through, the trials that I went through, if I could go back, I wouldn't have been that stubborn kid that was like, I'm not leaving my friends. I wish that I could undo that. I can't unring that bell now. But I feel that really confident that I'm giving our children a wonderful opportunity. We've had the conversation, like, would you like to go back? Is that something that you would want? And it's a resounding no. Don't ask me that again. Like, I'm happy the way it is. I have a daughter that's going to start taking high school classes. I would say that I've had to get more serious about her path moving forward. Again, she wants to be an author illustrator right now. So I really am trying to make sure that I zero in on the courses that would be best for her if she wants to stay on that path, and making sure I'm checking the boxes. As of now, she would like to go to college. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of fulfilling those needs along the way so that she has the best opportunities. But I don't believe that I think you can mess up your kids no matter what situation that you're in. And I think that everything is a learning experience. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
It was about affordable homeschooling. Is it possible to homeschool on a budget?
Yeah, I say, again, I had like a blog post about that, and I share it quite often in our group. There's so many free resources out there, and even, throwing it out there, like Khan Academy, not every part of that has worked for my family, but it's something that is a great thing. My kids used biology this year, and they realized that they really loved biology. They wanted to zero in on that again for next school year. So we use it as kind of a jumping off point. There's so many free library resources online, and math, every subject can be covered in a free way. And I think our group is really great at covering that. If you just search for free resources, there's so many different opportunities.
Wendy, I would like to hear your take on this.
Yes, I think, again, Britt had mentioned, as a mom and with an older child, really becoming aware of the path that her daughter is going to take.
I think you might be muted, Wendy.
No.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So I was just saying that besides being a parent and then being a teacher, another hat we have to wear is being an administrator, which means that, yes, we have to make sure that we are keeping track of our children's progress. And especially at the older ages, like Britt mentioned, we really have to buckle down and say, okay, what are the goals here? Once our student starts to get into the middle school levels, we need to take a look at, okay, are we going to college? Are we going to vocational school? What are we going to do? And they kind of work backwards from there. Our kids absolutely are getting into excellent universities, any type of university on an international level. I just launched 2 kids off to college, and this was through homeschooling. So yes, it's absolutely possible. And there's also universities today are really appreciating the diversity that homeschool kids give the university. Absolutely taking criteria from traditional students, and that's something that parents should definitely be proactive about and look at ahead of time if depending on the career they want to get into, and just basically we do need to keep their records in check. So and we can definitely do this on a budget or even without a budget, just because there's so many different groups. For example, Yugo World is one of them. It's only, I'm sorry to plug at this moment, but it's probably the most inexpensive app that you can find with curriculum and with everything you need. And just like us, there are many other venues that kind of help homeschool parents get the resources that they need. And what a lot of parents don't realize is on the site for the Department of Education in your state, most states will recommend different programs, although they do not offer anything for homeschool parents, but you can find a world of resources there as well.
So, Tina, I would love to hear your take on this. And I know that you know about record keeping. We have a question from Diamond on what are the best ways to keep up with records. So, would you be able to answer that one before answering the other one?
Sure. Yeah. As far as record keeping, I really think you need to know what your state requires, first of all. Pretty lenient as far as record keeping, but please check with the hslga.org for your state laws as far as record keeping. I'm in Louisiana. I have to keep track of attendance, which is very, as well as I not required, but I keep a grade book and report as well. And I do have free form on my website that any parents with their keeping. And if you have any questions, I have posted my my website as well as all my social media. I'm always accessible to answer any questions from parents. And just to jump into about our kids, homeschool kids getting into college, I really think if parents search that question, they will find that homeschool students are more have a higher college rate as far as graduation than public school, as well as that was the point I was trying to make. I'm sorry, I lost train of thought. But they do have a higher graduation rate than homeschool students. And I do have a friend that is he does unit studies for history, as well as he has a YouTube channel, History for the Ages. He's been a college professor for almost 30 years. His name is Dave. And he has a video on YouTube that's he talks about how homeschool students are better students than public school students. So I thought that was a really great aspect of him to bring out. More prepared, they're note takers, they pay attention because we as parents have taught that skill and allowed them that opportunity to learn at their pace and their comfort level. So I thought that was really cool for him to make a YouTube video about how much better students that are homeschooled in college are versus public schools. So if you research a lot of those questions, you're going to find the statistics are higher in the positive avenue for homeschool students versus public schools. I hope I answered everything.
So, Laura, I would like to get. Yes, you did. Absolutely. Laura, I would love to hear your opinion on this fear about getting kids into college and then also being able to homeschool affordably.
Well, I can definitely speak to both of those. Like I said, my brother, he got into a very prestigious college and paid what he would have to pay for a community college because he had so many scholarships. And now he's a big shot engineer that's sent to Malaysia and England and Australia and all over the world to design I don't know what for I don't know what, but he is he has obviously had no problem getting into college. His company is actually paying for him to be able to further his education into getting his master's and his doctorate and all this kind of stuff because he is so valuable to them. So, and that was from a homeschool background where my mom was not able to do very much in the later years. And because of those things, I just wanted to be done with 7th grade and the rest of my education. So I took the GED. I got out and had no problem getting into a college. And I had one remedial math course. That was the only thing that I needed. And so those that are like concerned that, well, if I don't check every single box, they're not going to be able to get there. They can get there. It's okay. It's okay. Because I had lots of boxes not checked, and it was fine. I never had a problem with that. As far as affordability goes, my husband and I have been married for almost 11 years, and we had like about 5 years where we had a long streak, a long season of being extremely broke. We have been to food banks. We have had times when we had peanut butter and jelly, and we gave the jelly to the kids because that we didn't have enough, or eating ramen soup and grilled cheese because that's what we had for that week. So we have definitely had those seasons, and there are so many resources, and there's companies that are completely free. As far as I know, Easy Peasy is completely free. There's other ones. There's companies that offer free sections. I know The Good and the Beautiful offers language arts and math as digital downloads for the elementary years. And so and I think people are worried that, because they're free, that means they're not good. That is not true. Maybe this particular, like, I didn't care for Easy Peasy. It wasn't my favorite, wasn't my style, but it's a great curriculum and people graduate with it. And maybe I'll choose a different free resource instead of that one, but that doesn't mean it's not a good curriculum. There's fantastic curriculums out there. And then never forget the value of libraries and YouTube, because you can learn just about everything you need, and Google, if you instill those research skills in them. And so you absolutely can school them well, and not just like the basics, but school them well on a very, very, very tight budget where you're pouring almost no money into your schooling. And you know what? Maybe you don't like those curriculums. Maybe you just follow their passions and you have a notebook and you're there. Okay, do copy work here. This is your handwriting. Okay, here's your research skills. We're going to work on this. Okay, read me this book from the library about whatever topic it is. And, I had my kids skip counting limes today at the grocery store. There's so many inventive ways to be able to teach your kids skills that they need to get through life, that there's no reason you can't for money. Money is not a reason to not homeschool.
So I wanted to talk about some statistics that we actually found, and that is that the National Home Education Research Institute reported homeschool students tend to score about 15 to 30% higher on standardized academic tests than public or private counterparts. And these are the tests that colleges consider for admissions. And over 74% of home educated adults ages 18 to 24 have taken college level courses, compared to 46% of the general United States population. So when it comes to higher level education, you do not have to be worried. People are finding by and far that homeschool educated kids have a passion for learning. They have mastery over these subjects that they're interested in, and they have a well-rounded education because you are pouring your love into them and focusing on providing them with the best education possible. You're able to do this because you're focusing on your kids and you're being their advocate. So if you're considering homeschooling and you have other questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of the wonderful ladies here. Britt Young over at the Roost at Wolf Pine. We also, Wendy Fama with Yugo World, Laura Saldana over at Hartspark Homeschool, Tina with Big Easy Homeschooling, and Z with Adroit Comics. We all are really passionate about helping you to homeschool affordably and to be able to homeschool well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I really appreciated you sharing your experiences with homeschooling and to encourage other homeschoolers.
Thank you so much for having us on.